For more than a century, Switzerland quietly removed children from their parents. Not criminals, not orphans, children whose only crime was being poor. More than 100,000 of them. And some of those children were literally auctioned to farmers in village squares. Not in the 1800s, not during some forgotten medieval era. This system ran until 1981 in the wealthiest, most stable democracy in Europe. And for decades after it ended, nobody talked about it. Let me be fair. Switzerland did not invent poverty, and the system they built to deal with it, Verdingkinder, literally contracted children, wasn't designed as cruelty, not officially. The idea was simple. If a family couldn't afford to raise a child, the municipality would find someone who could, often a farmer, a tradesman, a household that needed extra hands. The authorities framed it as charity. The children would be fed, sheltered, taught a trade, and for some, it was exactly that. Some foster families were kind. Some children grew up with stability they never had. I don't dispute any of that. What I dispute is the mechanism, the scale, and the silence that followed. Imagine a village square in rural Switzerland. It's Tuesday morning, early spring. The air smells like hay and manure. Farmers arrive with wagons. The cattle auction ends. The animals are led away. And then, the children are brought in. A boy, maybe 7, maybe 8, standing in the center of the square, coat too big, shoes too small, holding nothing. A farmer walks around him, lifts his chin, checks his arms, squeezes his shoulders. Someone asks how much the municipality will pay. Another farmer says he can take the boy for less. And just like that, the child is sold. This was the Kindermarkt, the children's market. It happened across German-speaking Switzerland, in town squares, church halls, local inns. The child was awarded to the lowest bidder, the family that asked for the least financial support from the municipality. Not to whoever was kindest, not to whoever had the best home, to whoever was cheapest. Sensitive observers in the 19th century compared the Kindermärkte to slave markets, and they weren't exaggerating. A newspaper in Bern announced one with a single line, Verdingkinder available, Tuesday, after the cattle auction. After the cattle auction. Let me tell you about a boy I found in the records. His name was Paul Stutzmann. Paul was born without a father. His mother couldn't keep him, so she gave him to his grandmother. When the grandmother died, they sent him to the nuns. When the nuns were done with him, they sent him to a farmer. Paul said, "I had to milk the cows before school. He treated me very harshly. I was nobody." I was nobody. 3 words, and they appear in nearly every Verdingkinder testimony I've read. Paul wasn't beaten because he broke a rule. He wasn't punished because he failed. He was beaten because he was there, because he belonged to no one, because the system had declared him available. And Paul was not the exception. He was the structure. The children worked from dawn, fed last, slept in barns, in cellars, under staircases. Many were forbidden from eating with the family. They were not children in those homes. They were labor. Turi Honega, another Verdingkind, described it later. My life consisted of working and sleeping. There was little food. Everyone shunned me. I remember feeling invisible, as though I did not exist. I ate and slept under the stairs, far from the family table. Under the stairs, far from the table, in a country famous for precision, for neutrality, for chocolate. And this is where the story changes. Because what happened to Paul and Turi wasn't just poverty gone wrong. There was something else running underneath the system, something deliberate. The Swiss Civil Code of 1912 allowed the removal of parental custody in cases of neglect. But what counted as neglect? Poverty, being unmarried, being a traveler, being Jenisch. The Jenisch are an itinerant people in Switzerland, nomadic. They've been on Swiss roads for centuries, and in 1926, the most respected children's charity in the country, Juventute, launched a program specifically targeting them. It was called Kinder der Landstrasse, Children of the Open Road. The program's director, Alfred Siegfried, said the goal explicitly: to break up the bands of traveling people and tear apart the family community, not to help children, to destroy a culture. Between 1926 and 1973, approximately 590 Jenisch children were forcibly taken from their parents, placed in institutions, foster homes, psychiatric hospitals. Some were sterilized. They were forbidden from speaking their language, from traveling, from being who they were. This wasn't poverty relief. This was erasure, run by a charity for 47 years in Switzerland. But that's not the part that keeps me up at night. Maybe Switzerland was simply managing poverty badly. Maybe it was all just mistakes. But then you look at the numbers. In 1930 alone, 35,000 Verdingkinder in a country of 4 million. Between 1920 and 1970, more than 100,000 children placed through coercive measures. Brothers sent to different cantons, sisters placed hundreds of kilometers apart, no forwarding address, no contact allowed. And the records? Many were sealed, some destroyed, others never created. I've seen this pattern before. In America, with the orphan trains, 250,000 children sent west, 97% with no records. In Spain, with the stolen babies. Different countries, different decades, same architecture. Take the child, erase the origin, create someone new. Let me tell you one more story. Her name was Marlene Brown Beeler. She was taken from her mother as an infant, placed with a farming family in the Emmental. She spent her childhood doing field work, carrying water, cleaning stables. She was never told where she came from, never told she had siblings. When Marlene was in her 60s, she found out she had a brother. They had been separated at birth. He had been placed in a different canton, different name, different family. They met for the first time after 50 years. She said she couldn't stop staring at his face because he looked like her, and nobody had ever looked like her before. 50 years in a country the size of the Netherlands. The system didn't need to hide her, it just needed to file her away. And when you lay it all out, the dates tell you everything. Here is the timeline. 1912, the law changes. Poverty becomes enough to take a child. 1926, the Jenisch program begins. Children removed by ethnicity. 1930, the peak. 35,000 children in placement. 1973, the first exposure. A journalist breaks the story. 1981, the system finally ends. The year MTV launched, the year the World Wide Web was being invented. 2013, the apology on behalf of the Swiss government. 2025, the recognition, the program against the Jenisch, formally declared a crime against humanity. More than a century of practice, a 12-year apology process, and 25,000 francs per victim. For a childhood. Coincidence or system? You decide. The system didn't need a conspiracy. It needed a budget, a municipality that couldn't afford a family, a farmer who needed cheap hands, a law that said the state could decide what neglect meant, and a country that agreed not to look too closely. Paul Stutzmann said 3 words I can't stop hearing. I was nobody. He wasn't describing an emotion, he was describing a status. The system had made him administratively invisible. No records, no parents, no name that mattered. 100,000 children in the most prosperous country in Europe, auctioned in town squares, beaten in silence, erased from the record. The children are still alive, some of them, in their 60s, 70s, 80s now. They remember the farms, the staircases, the markets, and for the first time, someone is listening. But Switzerland wasn't the only country where institutions made people disappear. In Ireland, they didn't need a law. They didn't even need an auction. They didn't even need poverty as an excuse. They had one word: sinner. And with that word, they locked women inside laundries that weren't laundries for years, for decades, without a trial, without a sentence, without a name. The last one closed in 1996. That story is next.